So welcome back to another episode of the Beams Build. We're jumping into another portion of the fuel system. Now this one's pretty cool because this is something that I wish I knew about a long time ago. In the last episode we did the regulator, which is also something I wish I knew about, but this kind of changes a lot of things. So I'm way more excited. Cheers. AN fittings are these really cool like aluminum fittings that have tapered ends on them, and they seal and seat, and it makes hoses really easy to interchange because you put these on there and stuff. So when you're doing your fuel system, it's really nice to have AN stuff. The hardest thing to do when you have a fuel system is to figure out, like, sometimes you have an AN fitting or some type of interesting fitting on your fuel rail and you're trying to adapt it to a regular steel line. Like on the BMW, we have two steel fuel lines that are hose styled lines. So there's two metal tubes that come out, the fuel tubes, the fuel line tubes, and then there's a rubber hose that slips over it with a hose clamp on it. Now that I've put all of these pressure regulators and different AN fittings on my fuel rail, I need to convert those fuel metal lines to AN stuff so that it can be really easy to work on. And I just don't want rubber hoses like floating around on top of it. If I ever want to do some E85 or something like that, then I have these really nice two steel fuel lines that go from here all the way to the back, and I can figure out where they turn rubber, convert those to AN, and then put in a fuel cell, which is the ultimate goal with this car. I want to eventually put like a 14-gallon fuel cell in the trunk and cut out the spare tire holder. We'll get to that some other time. I don't think we're going to do that for now. For now, we're going to be dropping in a 255 Walbro that was also provided by Radium into the fuel tank. Well, we can get into the fuel pump after this. In this episode, I'm going to show you how to convert your metal lines to ANs and then how to put together AN lines, because we need to make lines that go from our fittings on our stock tubes up to our fuel rail. So what I want to show you specifically in this portion of the video is how to take, I want to show you how to take this solid fuel line from the E30 and put a AN conversion on it. This one is totally jacked up, and that's because I slipped the socket on it on accident. So don't do that, but it's gonna go from this to this. So it goes from a rubber slip fit hose style thing with a little bubble flare in it to a -6 AN setup. And then these will eventually be tucked up against the firewall, but I pulled them down. So let me show you this fitting a little bit more in detail. So there you have it, it's these three pieces. Fuel line through this, sticks out a little bit, then brass bushing, then fuel line comes up through this one, the brass bushing goes onto it, and then the male -6 portion of it screws down into it, pinching this brass bushing onto the line, into this female fitting, and then onto the base of the -6 as well. So it's a pretty cool fitting you can get at your local parts stores. I don't think they have any of these yet on Phoenix Industries. If they do, go check that out. I got this from a local parts store out here called G&J Aircraft. Yeah, pretty sick. So let me show you how to install it really quick. Also, totally forgot to mention this tool here that you're going to need in order to use a fitting of this style. So this is a pipe cutter. This tool has two rollers on it and then a blade, and so you tighten it down. You spin it around and it puts a groove into the line, and you keep dragging it, and then you tighten it up a little more and you drag it some more, and then you tighten it up a little more and drag it some more, and then it'll eventually cut the line in half. So don't forget to get one of these because you're gonna need it. I already cut mine and I already prepped them. So when you use that tool, also what it'll do is where it cuts the line, it'll kind of build like a little flare. So you have to take some sandpaper and a file, and you cut down that flare so that your brass fitting can fit over, because these are super, super precise. So this is the fuel line we're gonna be messing with. As you can see, it's already sanded down and kind of prepped. So step one is you're gonna take the female portion of the fitting and put it on there. There it is. Now you can see the line is sticking out of the fitting, and now we need to slip the brass fitting on. Now we need to put this like sandwich collar on, I guess we can call it. They're really, really snug. Should be good. Then we can pull this female portion of the fitting back up. And then once that's up in its position, then we'll take the -6 portion of it and we'll screw that on. And then the last thing to do is to hold the base in position and tighten up the fitting. So I'll go ahead and do that. I need 2 hands, and right now I'm holding the camera with my right hand. So that's pretty much how you do it. And bam! Managed to slip the socket again. Good times, good times. That's how I did mine. I actually ended up using an 11/16 on the head and then a -6 wrench on the base. Now if I have that tight enough, I'm not gonna be able to know until I actually pressurize the system. I didn't really get like super crazy with tightening it, just a snug, and you can kind of hear it like has like that aluminum jumping noise. So it's kind of like stop there. But those are now converted. So now I have the 90 up the top of the fuel rail. We have the radium system on the end of the fuel rail, and both of those are -6s. So there's a -690, and then I put a -645 off of the radium return on the direct mount regulator. All right, so the next thing we got to do is create some fuel lines. Now the length of them is going to be relative to which one we're making. I don't know which one we're making, but at least I can show you how to put on AN ends onto a hose. From there, you can do your measurements and install them and all that. Everything in my fuel system is -6. -6 is gonna be the size of the nut that you're putting on your AN, and then there's also gonna be a hose that correlates with that size as well. The hose needs to be cut flush. This one has kind of an angle, so I'm gonna cut it flush. And the way you do that is you tape it up so that none of these strands go everywhere. And then they make different ways of like cutting them. Some of them you just can chop through. This has still braid in it. So I'm just gonna hit it with the grinder really quick, and then I'll show you it nice and smooth. So now we have a nice clean straight cut. And I just did that with the grinder and some masking tape. You can do it with whatever. There is gonna be a bunch of residue left in there. You can tap it out, you can do whatever, a Q-tip or whatever you want to do. I recommend flushing these with water, with fuel, whatever. Make sure you flush your fuel lines before you run them into your rail, because you will clog your injectors, and that's no good, because then you have to troubleshoot and blah, 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 and hopefully you find it. So again, Phoenix Industries, -6 straight. There's a part number, J600-3 is your part number for these -6 straights, but it's pretty simple. You're gonna unscrew the end here. Now you'll have a little taper end there. That's gonna go into the rubber, as you can see. ID on the inside of here, the line will also be pinched, so it'll kind of flare it into that. Now that that's ready, we'll go ahead. As soon as that's off, be careful that you don't like flare out anything. You don't wanna do any of that. Then we'll take our bottom half of our AN. We'll push this on. This is gonna be a really snug fit, which is good and which is what we want. We cut it, and then we got the fitting to go in there. Typically you want the hose to go to the very edge of the threads in there. That's what you're looking for, to get it seated all the way in. So after you get the hose up to the base of those threads, you're gonna go ahead and put your end in like a vise or something like that. You can buy these soft jaws, is what they're called, from Phoenix, and they just they're just got little magnets on the back side, so you throw them in and then they'll hold your fitting in place. And what I like to do is I like to put some oil here just to kind of allow this to slip into that hose just a little bit easier. So I'll go ahead and do that. So you'll go ahead and, after it's oiled up, take it, screw it in, get it started with your hands first. And then you're gonna get it down as far as you can with your hands, but you'll start getting some resistance. Hopefully that oil's helping you out a little bit. And then we wanna get this collar all the way down, almost touching the bottom. So we'll go ahead and tighten it up. Oh, you can still see a little air gap in between the top portion and the bottom portion of the sleeve, and that's getting really snug as you get closer to the bottom, because it's actually beginning to press this hose into the ID of the sleeve. Pretty much how you make an AN line. It's a little funky because I don't remember -6 being this difficult to work with. This one bothered me a little bit. So there you have it, your very first AN line setup. They're not too bad to make. This -6 was kind of being a pain in the butt for me, but we got it, it's done, it's there, it's ready. And so now we can take this and screw it into the adapters we put on the hard lines, and then we can measure it out and cut the other end to have either, we have a 45 in our system and we have a 90 in our system, but again, there's 2 different lengths. So how far we're gonna cut this, I don't know. So now you've taken a hard line and converted it to an AN setup. So now, let's just say this is the fuel feed. We'll figure out how to route it exactly up to our -6 on the feed line. So it'll go from down there now and then up to here, let's say. That's typically how you're going to be converting your hardline fuel lines into AN lines. So now the system will be much easier to work on. A little bit of growing pains, but after you get over those, you'll be all right. We're gonna have to convert this end as well. If I want to loop up or what I want it to do exactly, if I want it to go underneath there and then come up through here. So I gotta map it all out and lay it out. But you're gonna run your feed line up into this portion of your fuel rail, and then your return is gonna come off the bottom side here. There's a -645 hose end on the bottom side of this. So I'll have to figure out the exact lengths that we want to go with. So that's pretty much the gist of converting your hard lines into AN lines. There's a lot of little steps and they all just add up and take a bunch of time. So you're gonna have to cut some time out for this project that you'll be doing. But once it's all said and done, when it comes to like the maintenancing aspect of your fuel system, it's gonna be ridiculously easy because of all those AN lines. Take your time, put your money where you think it's worth value. I typically like to do everything in ANs, coolant lines, fuel lines, oil lines. There's a bunch of different avenues you can use ANs on, and they're just easier to work with. I like building them like this. Again, ease of maintenance, all that stuff's pretty simple. If you ever have to recreate a hose, you can take yours off, remake it on a bench, and then hand it off to your buddy if you guys are building the same cars, or if you just want spares. Think about it when you're doing your next fuel system or your cooling system or your brake system or your clutch system or whatever it is that has some type of hydraulic in it. Think about an AN line. You can also use them for air as well, pneumatic stuff. But anyways, think about it. Let me know what you guys think. It's pretty simple, it's pretty nice, and it changes your entire car and the feel of your engine bay too. Instead of having hoses and clamps, and you have beautiful black ANs, or again, clear or blue. As always, we thank you guys so much for watching the episode. I'm gonna finish up the fuel lines. That's pretty much what I'm gonna be doing the rest of them. I'll show them to you later on, and I'll show you kind of some things we do with like handcuffs to keep them all tidy and whatnot, and how we ended up mounting them and the way I routed them. But for now, that'll be all. Thank you guys, and as always, stay safe, my dudes. All right guys, you made it to the end of the video. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. If you want to support the channel in another way, you can head to holdfast-usa.com. Buy anything on the website. It helps us keep this content coming to you. Huge thanks to the sponsors as well who support all these different series that we want to bring you guys. Give them a follow, give them a like, tell them Micah sent you. As always, boys, stay safe.